House Education Committee meeting. It is 1:38, so we are late. My apologies. Committee, we're only going to do two things today. We're going to work Senate Bill 66, and we're going to work Senate Bill 123. If you recall, Senate Bill 66 was that interstate compact bill, and Senate Bill 123 was the Veterans Instruction Bill that we heard yesterday. So with that, I'd like to start with Senate Bill 166. Senate Bill 66, the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. So with that, committee discussion. All right, seeing no discussion, I believe I do have an amendment. And while Jason's passing it out, I want to explain it really quick. So long story short, 10 states have to pass this, 5 already have, but there are states that have passed legislation that changes literally just 2 things in the bill, strikes them. And remember, with it being a compact, we have to be using the same language as all these other states. So if you'll turn to the back on page 2, I appreciate that. I offer an amendment and get applause. That's great. On line 23, we strike uniformed service and replace it with the word armed forces. And on line 24, we strike out the 3 words on active duty. So that's all this amendment does, which makes us compatible with Utah and the other states have already passed this. So any questions on the amendment? Very good.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve this amendment.
All right, we have a motion. Second from Representative Riley. I saw him first. So those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, further discussion on Senate Bill 66. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since I've slept for a while, since we did this, is this the one I kind of recall that the KSD State Board said, hold off, wait, we're going to let us work this and revisit it, and they were going to like talk about it the next day? My question is, am I remembering that correctly?
You are. The state board actually met yesterday, and I would turn to Jerry. He's not here, but he was in this email. The state board met yesterday at 10 o'clock, and the state board, it was mentioned that we were working on sort of building the relationship between us, and board member Arnold made a motion to accept Senate Bill 66 and for them to sign on as approving of Senate Bill 66, and the motion was passed 6-3. So the state board is on board with this via vote 6-3 as of yesterday. And so I have that in my email. I got that, I believe, late last night. So I apologize for not forwarding that on to you. But yes, the state board voted 6-3 to sign on to this. Representative Featherston.
Do we have the ability to look up that vote? Like who voted how? I trust you're telling us the truth.
And I watched it late last night. I can't specifically tell you. I know board members, Dina. Oh, I forgot Dina's here. Dina, would you like to come up and tell us how that vote went? I apologize. I didn't see you there.
Are you wanting to know who voted, how? I can tell you, I know 2 of them were, now thinking about names is another issue.
I believe it was.
Yes, it's only for me. Were they from Johnson County? How did they vote?
The member from Hayes, the member from Hutchinson, and the member from Olathe voted no.
Thank you.
Everyone else, Jim Porter is in Italy, so he's not there, and Ann Ma did vote, was able to vote, so by Zoom, so.
We don't need to discuss Jim Porter being on a cruise in Italy right now, because some of us are a little bitter about that.
Well, in about 2 or 3 weeks, you can go on one also.
That's a fair statement. I appreciate that.
And we'll all be saying, oh, how fun. Glad he got to.
Thank you, Board Member Horst. Further discussion on Senate Bill 66? Very good. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to pass it out favorably. Moved by Representative Schreiber. Do I have a second from Representative Estes? Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. With that, committee, let us open Senate Bill 123. Jason, if you don't mind, we got testimony, but I don't think we actually got a brief on this. So if you don't mind, could you just give us a brief on this real quick, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 123 is a bill that amends one statute regarding residency of members of the armed forces of the United States and their spouses and dependents for purposes of tuition and fees at colleges and universities in Kansas. Under current law, the member must be permanently stationed in Kansas, and what the bill would do would qualify that. Instead of permanently stationed, would be simply stationed in Kansas for at least 11 months during their service. And that also applies for the spouse or dependent of a veteran who was stationed in Kansas for at least 11 months. So it, I believe, reduces the time period for when the service member has to be stationed in Kansas to be considered a resident for purposes of tuition and fees at a post-secondary institution. The other amendments you see in 123 are simply cleanup amendments that we have made to the statute as part of our typical cleanup process in the revisor's office. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Discussion on the bill. Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has probably been answered, but why 11 months? That seems like just an odd month, but thank you.
Jason.
My understanding is that the current policy is, I believe, 12 months to establish residency under policy, and so 11 months cuts that time. I don't know why 11 was chosen as opposed to some other number less than 12, but that's what the bill states.
Okay, Representative Murphy.
I think it probably has to do with up at Leavenworth because they come in there lots of times. They come in like in August and leave in July.
Representative Haskins.
Yeah, I would agree that, if they live 12 months, then they could claim residency. So 11 months gives the incentive. I would just, for the benefit, a little history on this, since this is in the wheelhouse of Kirk, which is a scary place sometimes, but you're going in there. So it used to be, when I was director of admissions, it used to be that in-state and out-of-state tuition was subsidized by the federal government. So they drew this line to make sure that the in-state tuition was actually being covered by tax-paying Kansas citizens. And the federal government would then help subsidize the out-of-state across. Well, that's been long gone, hasn't been a practice. And so basically, when you see in-state and out-of-state tuition, you're looking at a market-based price. And the universities maintain the out-of-state just because students are willing to pay the out-of-states. And that's why you can, like Arkansas and other states have, if you have a certain GPA, we're going to give you in-state tuition. So that's the degree of flexibility. So just know, and when I was at Washburn, I would just advocate, let's just waive out of state altogether because that opens up our market base. So just to let you know that this is a really good bill and it helps these students get an education in Kansas that we all know we need to retain.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be in support of this bill. My husband would have been one of those kids that his dad was stationed here 5th grade through 11th grade. And had he chose to leave Kansas when he retired, my husband would not have qualified for in-state tuition, and he considers Kansas his home because it's where he spent the majority of his growing up time. So I think these kids do sometimes get attached to a base, and it might be in just a year. We have other friends from Leavenworth. They were only there a year-ish, but they've maintained their house in Leavenworth and hope to retire here. So people do develop strong community ties, and I think we'd be lucky to have them back in Kansas.
Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for discussion, I would move that we pass out Senate Bill number 123, favorable for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion. There's a second. Further discussion. Representative Estes.
Mr. Chair, I do have a conceptual amendment because this is such a great bill that I would like to help it become active sooner than later so that appropriate planning can begin, and I would like to change it to become effective upon publication in the Kansas Register.
Okay. You have a second from Representative Riley. Discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Featherston, my apologies.
All right, is that going to throw it back to the Senate then, and like they'll have to approve that date change? Where are we since it's a Senate bill?
It's a Senate bill, so what would happen is then we would pass it on the floor, and then the bill would have to go to conference, and they'd have to agree to this change.
I definitely agree with the concept. I sometimes get worried about shells and other terrible things happening when they cross the rotunda, so.
Well, the good news is they didn't send us that many bills, so we don't have a lot to do that has passed the Senate, so. All right, further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Very good, we're back on the bill. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the bill. Seeing none, those in favor of passing out Senate Bill 123 say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, the bill is hereby declared passed. With that committee, we are not planning on working tomorrow. The only thing we have left is, I believe, Senate Bill 13, which we will discuss possibly working next week, and then also we have a couple of hearings scheduled next week. So with that, we are adjourned. We'll see you Monday.